Okay, the basic setup of our worm farm at the Currumbin RSL is based on a bathtub model, but any sort of tub will do, as long as it's got a free drainage at the bottom. Starting from the bottom up, in the bottom of our worm farm we've got gravel, which is of a type of road fill consistency. Small stones or river stones will probably do the same thing. Above the gravel we've got a layer of shade cloth, which could be substituted with Hessian sacks, any sort of fabric with large drain holes. It's to stop the worms from basically penetrating from the organic matter above and getting out through the hole in the bottom of the container or the bathtub. So basically we start with our gravel in the bottom, then we've got a layer of Hessian or shade cloth which acts as a filter so that the worm weed fertiliser can come through the stones at the bottom and leach out into a tub that sits below the actual tub. We use 20-litre buckets to catch the worm weed at the bottom, and our bathtub or our container is elevated off the ground. So beneath your bathtub you've got a lower container that catches the worm weed, which we use as a fertiliser on our gardens. Now above the shade cloth or the Hessian layer is where the organic matter comes in, and this is where the worms reside. We feed into this organic matter, we feed paper, shredded paper scraps, we feed coffee grinds, and we feed all our green organic waste from the kitchen. The things that worms don't like the most are meat and dairy products, citrus stuff because the acid's a bit too strong in citrus, and onions and tomatoes are a bit too acidic, a bit too strong for the worms. We basically feed most of our worms on things like pumpkin scraps, cauliflower and broccoli scraps, carrot skins, potato skins. Those sort of things are ideal, as well as the shredded paper and the coffee grinds that I mentioned earlier. Worms will also eat sawdust, vacuum cleaner dust, and most organic sort of stuff they're into. Apple peels, banana peels, anything like that's great. Before we feed the green waste from our kitchen into the bathtubs, we put it through a grinder, and that grinds it up into a fine consistency that's kind of like sawdust. It's a kind of a pulp is what we feed them. Like anything that you put through a kitchen shredder, it just makes it easier for the worms to digest and break down. So we're just giving the worms a hand by shredding up all our green waste into a fine pulp. By shredding our paper, it makes it easier for them to not so much eat the paper, but as the paper rots down, then they eat it. They don't eat it straight away. But the paper helps dry out the matter in the tubs, and the paper also acts as a the paper helps to prevent the material in the tubs becoming too stodgy, soggy, and too much like a porridge. It kind of aerates it a bit, makes it a bit lighter for the worms to be able to wriggle through. Instead, a worm farm can become very gluggy if you're just putting very heavy organic waste into it all the time. The paper helps lighten it up a bit, and we find the worms are very happy in that environment. The worms that we've got, we purchase from Bunnings. You can buy 2,000 worms for approximately $50 a box, so that will help you get your worm farm started. The only other thing I should mention is the top layer. Now, across the top of our worm farm we keep a sack, and the sack, in the summertime if the sack's wet, it'll help protect the worms from the sunlight. Worms like it in the dark. And we also have a lid on top of the worm farm that stops any birds or predators coming in to attack the worms. So that's basically the top end of the deal. So it's great to keep them shaded. And another advantage of keeping them shaded is that the worm castings, what the worms excrete is called worm castings, and the worm castings provide the organic fertiliser that you need for your garden. Now, when you want to start a new garden bed, you can dig out the organic matter in the worm farm. You can perhaps sift out the worms if you want to keep them, but those worms will benefit your garden if you dig them into your garden. And so when your worm farm has become full, you can dig out the organic matter with or without the worms, put it in your prepared garden bed, and then on top of that you'd want to add mulch so that those organic castings don't get depleted by the sunshine. The worm castings don't like the sunshine, and the more the sun beats down upon that, the more it dries it out, the less nutrients you're going to have in your garden bed. So if you protect your worm castings and that beautiful lush organic fertiliser you've just dug out of your worm farm by putting a sugarcane mulch or a bark chip or something on top of it, your garden will be so much more fertile, as well as preventing it from becoming preventing weeds is another great reason for putting a mulch top layer over your garden. So that's about all I can say about the worm farm at the moment. I hope that's enough. Yeah.